Hi, this is Paul Thompson with Clemson Extension Service down here in the Chester Community Garden, and today I wanted to talk about a very prevalent squash pest, the squash bugs. One of your first indications that you have squash bugs, if you don't see the bugs themselves, are the fact you'll be able to find their eggs, which are kind of a bronze color. And in small clusters. So here's some right in here. And so whenever you see eggs, you want to rub those off and squish them between your fingers to eliminate a lot of bugs before they ever hatch out. And it takes a little bit of monitoring and that type thing, but if you just do what you can every day when you're just out checking your garden, you can really help reduce the amount. Okay, here's your adult squash bug, and if you don't want to use pesticides, which is kind of hard to do on squash once they're flowering, you can just hand pick and be rid of them that way. A trick I learned a good while ago, just by accident while watering squash, was that if you will water your squash plant, especially down in the crown area where they like to hide, they don't like the water. Yeah, that's good. Go ahead and drench those guys.
Get him on top too?
But wetting down around the crown of the plant, they like to hide down there, but they don't like the water, so they'll often come crawling out within several minutes.
Come to the top.
And make them easier to find and pick and be rid of. I see we got some bee activity right now too, so.
Yeah, I missed that. That's the flower right there. Yeah, that flower.
Oh, okay. So that's one reason why we don't want to be spraying. We got plants in bloom, we've got bees visiting the plant, and so you don't want to be spraying insecticides which are going to harm the bees. And then we have, well, this actually is another squash pest, but kind of a minor one, called the squash beetle. Looks a lot like a lady beetle, but the coloration is a little different. It's a much more light, kind of yellow-orange, with some prominent black spots. They seem to be a little more higher or more hemispherical in their shape than a lady beetle is. But they feed on the foliage, but don't cause a huge amount of damage unless you have a lot of them. So we've been dousing these squash plants, seeing if we can get more of the squash bugs up. We already had some come up from an earlier watering. But we'll wait a few minutes and show you the results of doing this trick with the water. The squash bug eggs hatch out into these little nymphs. To start with, they go through several molts before becoming an adult. But when they first come out of the eggs, they are green. There's a much younger one. But as they molt, they just kind of turn this light gray until they become the adult after the 5th molt. And these can also be taken care of by a simple mechanical means. So trying to pick these things off the plants are very important to keep the population down. A high population of squash bugs will really impact the squash. have an impact on the production. This is another pest, not particularly a squash pest. You drop that on the ground, but that was a leaf-footed bug nymph. They like to feed on things like your tomato fruits, which is bad news. But it's really important when you're trying to grow vegetables to do a lot of just monitoring and looking, making sure that you try to keep pests in check. So that they don't start causing a lot of issues later. The larger they are, the more they feed and the more damage they cause. Okay, we're back over here at the squash plants that got watered earlier, and we're starting to get a good many of the adults coming up because of trying to get away from the water. And I just missed 2 of them. These are stink bug relatives. They've got a little piercing, sucking mouth part, feeding on the plant sap, but they can definitely cause a lot of damage to your squash. Another squash beetle. Okay, well, we've been doing this a good bit lately, so that's one reason why our numbers are kind of low right now. But normally the first time you do it in the season, after you start seeing a lot of clusters of eggs, you're going to bring up a good many of them that you can then get rid of. So I hope you enjoyed this tip in a way to control squash bugs without using any insecticides. It would be very difficult to just depend on insecticides to control your squash bugs because of the fact that they are constantly laying eggs or constantly hatching out from eggs. You got all life stages present at the same time as the season goes on, and it would be something that you would have to continuously do while the squash plant is flowering and having a lot of bee activity, which we don't want to do. So all for now. We'll be back with more garden tips at a later date.